But now is the part of the evening where I'm going to introduce our speaker for the evening. So Nick, just two questions to introduce yourself to people. Who are you? What is your go-to karaoke song?
Good questions. I'm Nick. I work here for the church, working with the university students that we have as part of the church family here. Me and my wife moved to Cambridge in June, so we're fairly new around. Live in the south of the city with our two guinea pigs. I have actually never done karaoke as an adult, but I would be very down. The song that had to prep me for this, and the song that came into my head was Me and Julio Down in the Schoolyard by Paul Simon. Just a very fun song. There you go.
Brilliant. Well, over to Nick.
Great. We're thinking about hope, as we all know, and I want to start with a bit of history. After World War II, the scientists who were involved in the invention and the design of the atomic bomb, they were worried, some of them were worried specifically that what they had invented was going to end the world. So a group of them got together and they did what scientists do, and they started a journal called the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists. The aim was telling the world about the danger that they felt it was in, and to symbolize that danger, on the front cover of that journal, they put this clock that you can see above me. It's that last 15 minutes of a clock with a minute hand ticking down to midnight. The idea was that midnight represents the destruction of the human race, the end of the world as you know it, caused by human hands. And they symbolically placed that minute hand where they felt on the clock how close the world was to that happening. So in 1947, the first time they did this, they decided to put the clock at 7 minutes to midnight. 7 minutes. That's where they started. And I think that was meant to shock the world, meant to stir up action to do something. It was meant to be a bit scary. Over the next 80 or so years, the Bulletin has continued, and the changing board of scientists have continued to move this minute hand to symbolically represent how close they feel the world is to ending. And they've started measuring new things like climate change and emerging technologies, bio-threats. And that minute hand over those 80 years has fluctuated up and down, closer and further to midnight. In 2018, they set the clock as at 2 minutes to midnight. That was the closest they had ever put it in the history of the Bulletin. Even the heights of Cold War. In 2020, they put it down to 100 seconds. In 2023, they put it down to 90 seconds. In 2025, it went down to 89 seconds. And at the end of last month, end of January, they announced that they were going to move it down to 85 seconds. This group of scientists feels like we are that close to the world ending, the closest we have been at in 80 years. When that number was announced at the end of January, I wasn't particularly surprised, because we feel this, right? The world is not a good place, and it feels like it's getting worse. And you would have all just had lots of very interesting discussions on your tables, and with our thinking brains on, we can think of all sorts of answers to that question we were discussing. But I wonder if the feeling in our bones is that things are getting worse. More scary, less just, more and more abusive. War, inequality, famine, discrimination, systemic oppression. If I asked if there is more wrong with the world now than 10 years ago, I imagine you'd actually be able to name lots of things that you think have improved for the better. I also think that your gut feeling would be that things are getting worse. The world is dark. That's the world. I wonder about your life, T, whether you feel this on a personal level. Some of us will be thriving. But others of us, as we look at our lives or the lives of those around us, Maybe it feels like things are getting closer to midnight, that they're getting worse. Right, we don't just have to look to the news to find darkness, illness, bereavement, mental health struggles, discrimination, to find things not being as you think they should be. And as I'm kind of saying this, I'm sure there'll be things you'll be thinking of right now, and there'll be people in this room carrying pain and trauma that feels particularly heavy tonight. It's dark. Some of us, we don't want to think of the world like this. We kind of instinctively know that hope, positive thinking, is a good thing, that to live without hope is just hard. We want hope, right? So we work, some of us. We put in effort in order to be able to sustain hope, the hope that things might get better. Whether that's kind of through affirmations or gratitude or embracing positive thinking, we do what we can to try and stay hopeful. I wonder if sometimes that just feels like hard work. Like it takes a lot of effort just to keep hope going, swimming against the endless tide of the news and the headlines in order to stay positive. Sometimes maybe even ignoring the world, looking away from what's really happening in order to try and keep hopeful. That having hope sometimes means fighting what feels true about the world, and that the world feels like it keeps fighting back with bigger and bigger punches, and that we keep feeling weaker and weaker. Maybe we feel like Hannah, that we pin our hopes to things, and then those things let us down, and we're back where we started. And if maintaining hope means ignoring reality, denying the darkness of our world, then maybe hope itself is just futile. If it takes that much effort, it can burn us out. Maybe hope is just a bit naive. And maybe instead your answer might be that we should just accept. Just accept that this is how the world is. We are living in a world that the clock is 85 seconds to midnight, and that is just how it is. And we should accept that and learn to live with it. So how do we approach the world? Do we stare at the darkness directly and accept it? Or do we fight back, maybe futilely, maybe naively, ignoring the darkness and giving what strength we have to keep hope going? Where is hope in a world that feels like it's 80 seconds to midnight? Well, my conviction as a Christian, and what I want us to think about this evening for the rest of our time, is that hope is possible. It is possible in the face of our dark world to have real hope that isn't naive or futile, that doesn't require us to delude ourselves. It's possible to have a hope that one day things will get better, that light will come, the clock will go back, and to have that hope that changes today, that empowers us to be able to live. The message of Jesus, the message of the Bible says two things into this conversation. Firstly, that this is not how things should be. The world should not be full of selfishness and sickness and death. And secondly, it says this is not how things will be forever. The world will be put right, and that we can be certain of that. Listen to these words from a part of the Bible called the book of Isaiah. It's chapter 9, verse 2. They say, "The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of darkness, a light has dawned." I don't know if you remember how darkness felt to you when you were a child. Do you remember waking up and it being pitch black? You can see nothing, and you're almost immediately frightened. And the dark was oppressive. You're scared, not knowing what would happen to you, not knowing what's hiding in the dark. The Bible is very honest that that is what life is often like in our dark world. There's countless historical stories recorded in the Bible of the deepest darkness that humans are capable of. Imagine again, you're that child in that bedroom, that dark bedroom. And suddenly, a crack of light comes in under your bedroom door. And then you remember where you are, can see where you are, and you know you're not alone. You know nothing's hiding in the gloom. You're safe. You're at home. It's all okay. Someone is coming. That's what this verse is talking about. It was written maybe around 700 BC to an oppressed people living in Judah, in modern-day Israel. And it's part of a prophecy, a message from God delivered to his people through a human messenger called Isaiah. And Isaiah's message was that someone was coming who would bring light to the darkness, be like that light arriving at the end of a long, terrifying night. Isaiah goes on to describe this person who is going to come like this. He says, he will be called the Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. He's saying that this person who's going to come and bring light to the darkness will be God himself. See, the Bible says there is hope for us and for this world because there actually is a God who created this world, who is mighty and who is powerful enough to change things, a wonderful counselor, a mighty God, an everlasting Father, a Prince of Peace, that cares about us. He hates injustice and death and darkness. He cares about our pain. Okay, nice sounding idea, Nick. But looking at the world as it is, how do I know it's true? Is this just not kind of naive, futile hope too? What if God had revealed himself and shown us that this is who he is, this is what he's like? See, Isaiah was saying that God cares so much, he was going to come, he was going to show up as a human being to bring light into the dark. And 2,000 years ago, he really did it. He came in the person of Jesus from Nazareth. Jesus, a man born in this obscure town in the north of Israel, executed in his 30s. He is this wonderful counselor, this Prince of Peace, the mighty God himself, the light in the darkness. Don't just believe me because I'm saying it. I love instead for us to look together at some of the evidence for that claim. On your tables, you have copies of this, Luke's Gospel. It's a historical biography of Jesus written by Luke. He was a doctor. He interviewed eyewitnesses and of what Jesus said and did, and he wrote it all up, maybe around AD 60, just 30 years after the events they describe. And we're going to look at page 29, if you want to get that open. And we're going to start at the little 41. We're going to look at just one day, potentially just a few hours of Jesus' life. And we're going to see how Jesus brings light to the darkness in two people's lives. So reading from the little 41. Then a man named Jairus, a synagogue leader, came and fell at Jesus' feet, pleading with him to come to his house, because his only daughter, a girl of about 12, was dying. There's nothing potentially nothing more agonizing, more dark, than a parent losing a child. And Jairus' little girl is dying, and there's nothing that he can do. He's desperate. So he throws himself at the feet of Jesus and begs Jesus for his help. Jesus says yes. So they set out for Jairus' house together. But then Jesus, he gets delayed on the way. Look at the little 42, the second half. As Jesus was on his way, the crowds almost crushed him, and a woman was there who'd been subject to bleeding for 12 years, but no one could heal her. She came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped. This woman, she's been suffering from unceasing menstrual bleeding for 12 years. Not only would that mean she's in almost constant pain, but culturally at the time it would have meant she was ostracized, unable to participate in religious and community life. 12 years of suffering. 12 years of no one else being able to help. 12 years of getting expectations raised, going to see a new doctor, and then having crushing disappointments. 12 years of hope dying. And she reaches out and she touches Jesus. And Jesus feels it. Look at little 45. Who touched me? Jesus asked. When they all denied it, Peter said, Master, the people are crowding and pressing against you. But Jesus said, someone touched me. I know the power has gone out from me. Jesus stops and asks who did it. There's a massive crowd crushing him, jostling around, bumping about everywhere. But Jesus, his disciples, his students, they're like, mate, yeah, everyone's touched you. But Jesus felt her touch him. Amongst the crowd, amongst the busyness, amongst the noise, Jesus felt this woman in need, reach out to him and touch him. The God of the universe, in the busyness, felt her. Let's keep reading. Then the woman, seeing that she could go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet. In the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. Then he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace." She realizes that she can't just run away, so she comes and falls at Jesus' feet. And it turns out when she touched him, when she reached out to him, she was healed. That bleeding that had ruined and dominated her life for so long, it stopped. Jesus has ended her darkness. It's amazing. Imagine you're Jairus, watching that happen, knowing that every minute counts, your daughter's life depends on it, knowing that this man Jesus who has done this is your last hope too. So they set off again to his house, but before they get there, Jairus hears the words that every parent dreads. 49. While Jesus was still speaking, someone came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. "Your daughter is dead," he said. "Don't bother the teacher anymore." I honestly can't imagine what that moment must have been like for Jairus. It's really hard to think of a darker possible thing to experience. What does Jesus say in that moment? Does he say, "I'm sorry, Jairus, this is just the way things are, we all die eventually, we need to accept it"? Look at what he says. "Don't be afraid. Just believe, and she will be healed." What a thing to say. This isn't the time to play games, to make empty statements. And on the surface, honestly, Jesus' reply kind of seems a bit insensitive. If the hope he is offering is false hope, what he said here is imaginably cruel. If it's true hope, solid hope, then it might just be the best news that Jairus has ever heard. So which will it be? What kind of person is Jesus? Little 51. When he arrived at the house of Jairus, he did not let anyone go in with him except Peter, John, James, and the child's father and mother. Meanwhile, all the people were wailing and mourning for her. "Stop wailing," Jesus said. "She is not dead, but asleep." They laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. But he took her by the hand and said, "My child, get up." Her spirit returned, and at once she stood up. Then Jesus told them to give her something to eat. Her parents were astonished, but he ordered them not to tell anyone what happened. Jesus raised this child from the dead as easily as we might wake up someone from their sleep. Jesus speaks into this darkest of moments, and suddenly light rushes in. See, the hope he gave Jairus in that moment was not false, it wasn't cruel, it wasn't naive, it was solid and real. Who is Jesus? He's not just a teacher, he's not just a nice man. If the story is true, he has the power to turn grief into joy, to bring life out of death. Hope. And he can't be just a human being. Human beings don't do this. He must be God. The one who was promised by Isaiah, which means that God is real. And if this is what that God that is real is like, then that's hope. And Luke himself is writing this account, this biography, because he's been convinced himself by the evidence that Jesus really is God showing up in this world, the creator of the universe, coming as a human being to put things right. As we wrap up, I wonder what you make of what I've just said. I wouldn't expect anyone here to be convinced just in something so huge in one evening. If you're someone who doesn't believe that this is who Jesus is right now, I wonder, do you think this is worth considering, worth exploring, worth looking into and investigating for yourself? Because if is possibly true is so good. If this really is God showing up, it's hope. Jesus called his miracles, stuff he did like this, signs. They were like signposts. They climaxed in his own death and resurrection himself, going through the darkest of nights into glorious light. And we'll look at the stories of that in the next few Festival of Hope evenings. These miracles are signs pointing to two things. Firstly, pointing to who he really was, and secondly, pointing to what he was going to do in the future. He said that one day he would come to earth again, and when he does, everything he did on a local, individual, personal level 2,000 years ago, he will do on a global, cosmic level. The healing of this woman, the raising of this little girl, they're like a thumbnail preview, like a taster of an entirely new world that Jesus is one day going to bring about, a healed world, a world of no more chaos, no death, no mourning or crying or pain. That's what Jesus is about. And that picture of the future, that solid hope of the future, makes so much difference right now. To quote Star Wars, rebellions are built on hope. Right, the thing that enables people to change the world or face each day now is the hope that one day things might be better. Right, hope itself is a weapon to defeat the darkness. And in my job, I have the privilege of walking with people through the darkness of their lives. And even though I work with young people, their lives, for lots of them, are already filled with so much darkness. I've been in this job since June, as I said, and since then, there's been bereavements and extreme mental health struggles, long-term sickness, financial struggles. It is sad and often heavy. But one of the joys of my job is seeing how knowing this Jesus, knowing this God, gives people the hope to face it. Watching Jesus make a difference. Changing them, helping them to keep going, giving them the light to rebel against the darkness. Jesus is a hope that changes today. Without a God like this, it's hard to hold on to hope without it seeming futile. Without this kind of divine intervention, it's hard to see what is going to stop that doomsday clock. If this is true, there is a way to look darkness in the face and to still have hope. A hope that is not abstract or wishful thinking, but a person we can trust, a person we can investigate, a person who looks us in the eye and takes our hand in his. A hope that isn't naive or futile, that isn't based on ignoring reality, but is actually a response to the deepest truths about the universe and the person who created it. So hope isn't something that takes strength, but something that gives strength. And Jesus stands with his hands outstretched, inviting each one of us to come to him and experience that hope for ourselves. That's enough from me. We're going to hand back over to our table hosts, and for the next half an hour or so, we're going to chat about what we make of this stuff, what you think of what I've just said, and what you think of this account that we've been looking at together. And then when it's time to finish, Hannah will come back up again. Thank you.